Hello, everyone. My name is Khani Begum, and I'm an associate professor of English in the English department. And I would like to thank Dr. Cordula Mora for inviting me to give this address for the beginning of the 2021 Undergraduate Research Symposium. And I also want to say thanks to Matt Diamond for helping with my technical difficulties and also for getting this lecture up online. I teach in the English department, mostly literature and film courses, but I also teach a number of diversity-related courses as well, and multicultural issues, and more lately have been teaching more sort of politically oriented material. So, talking about diversity, why is diversity and inclusion important? First of all, our culture, race, our place of origin, class, and our bodies all determine how each of us experiences the world around us. And our experiences end up shaping our identity and our behavior. The places we have lived, the languages we have spoken, the songs we have sung, the books we have read, all inform and influence who we become. Understanding diversity of experiences of others leads us to recognize and respect each other as equal human beings with unique cultural, religious, and ethnic life experiences. Through this understanding, we are able to see others as equals and hence are able to empathize with them. Getting to know people of different diverse cultures also enhances our lives by exposing us to new life experiences and new ways of thinking and doing things. It also allows us to understand how others see us and helps dispel negative stereotypes and personal biases about different groups, races, ethnicities, abilities, religions, and sexualities. In essence, cultural diversity helps us recognize and respect ways of being that are not necessarily our own. When speaking about diversity, we also need to be clear that it is actually a type of literacy, and it is tied to global and cultural literacy. So I'm going to be talking about, sometimes I may use the term cultural literacy, sometimes diversity, but I kind of mean that the two are kind of tied together. Global and cultural literacy may not have been a high priority in most North American high school and even college course curriculums in the past, but the landscape has been changing rapidly as educational institutions, aware of migratory movements across continents, changing demographics even within the United States, and our constantly expanding world, are adapting to meet new challenges through revised curriculums and innovative educational strategies. Many curriculums now include works from and by other cultures and countries in core literature courses, while others that have mission statements promoting global cultural literacy and diversity include in required and area track new courses in their disciplines from multicultural, world, global, transnational, and diaspora perspectives. The more the world expands, the closer people get as travel, the internet, and economic and business partnerships make distances between places irrelevant. In the 21st century, knowledge about ourselves, our communities, and the next generation, Often our first encounter with diverse populations or with diverse ideas and perspectives may only occur when we first enter the university. If that university values diversity literacy and diversity exists there in some shape or form or is taught through diversified curriculums that take into account other perspectives and ideas, then students will be prepared to face the future and more likely to succeed. When we look to see what changes have been made in the last 2 or 3 decades to further diversity initiatives in education, we find that we have come a long way in advancing diversity. One, through curriculum development, with that which includes diverse material and perspectives. 2, by including underrepresented voices in all fields of study through new hires of scholars from different backgrounds and perspectives. And 3, by creating lecture series and programs that bring innovative and diverse scholars and other programs to the campus. 4, developing strategies for recruitment of students from diverse backgrounds and racial and ethnic groups. And 5, the creation in some cases, in some institutions, of entire departments and/or degree programs that focus on diversity and inclusion education. We need to be aware that this is still, however, a work in progress, and we are in the early stages of understanding the importance of diversity and how it can be achieved. BGSU is among the many universities across the United States to have consciously promoted a number of similar initiatives to advance diversity on campus. We now have a Division of Diversity and Belonging with Jennifer Carey as our Chief Diversity and Belonging Officer. The division has also drafted a strategic plan, which can be found on its webpage. I'm going to read also their diversity, the Bowling Green State University statement affirming diversity and belonging. That kind of goes to telling you what we value as important and where we are going. Bowling Green State University values diversity as essential to improving the human condition. Diversity and inclusion immeasurably enriches all that we do to engage, understand, and respect individuals. Within our community, the diversity of identities and life experiences determines how we perceive and contribute to society. We acknowledge that diversity has not always been understood or embraced in our society. Yet at BGSU, we will strive to understand and embrace diversity by breaking down barriers to meaningful participation to ensure that individuals are treated with dignity. As a community, we commit to advance this culture through a comprehensive strategy and diversity plan that focuses on the recruitment, retention, and success of a diverse student body, faculty, staff, and administration. As a public university for the public good, our bedrock commitment to diversity and belonging requires mutual respect, understanding, and valuing individuals to facilitate a more diverse and inclusive environment so all can belong. That's their statement, which I think encompasses a lot of the key factors of what we want in diversity in our educational institutions. Now, much has happened in our country this pandemic year, in addition to the continuance of a once-in-a-century worldwide pandemic. The unexpected outcome of the pandemic for many of us has been that it has given us time to reflect on what is most important in our lives and why. Some of the events of the last year have highlighted a divide in this country between different groups of people. Not everyone is willing to embrace diversity because they cannot recognize its importance and need in their individual lives. And to some extent, our statement of diversity at BGSU also kind of indicates that this hasn't always been the case, and this is going to be an ongoing process for us. Understanding the role of diversity in our lives is more crucial now because we have reached a new level at which we are tolerating intolerance. During the past year, despite the progress made over the last 2 decades, there have been some setbacks indicating that intolerance is on the rise, even as, and possibly because, diversity too is on the rise. While the year 2020 will be marked historically for the global pandemic of COVID-19, the pain, hurt, and loss suffered due to this virus is exacerbated by events of the past year, starting with increased police shootings of African-American men, like the killing of George Floyd, that sparked a summer of Black Lives Matter protests across the country and worldwide, rivaling the civil rights marches of the 1960s. The response by local police and armed National Guard contingents to these protests was swift and prompt in many cities and resulted in violent clashes and imprisonment of protesters. The Associated Press and The Guardian reported that over summer 2020, more than 10,000 people were arrested, most of them nonviolent. Since the beginning of this new year, 3 other significant events that could likely change the trajectory of this country's future have taken place. 1, the January 6th insurrection and attack on our capital. 2, what followed 2 weeks later, the inauguration of the 4th President of the United States and the performances and entertainment, so to speak, that followed after the inauguration. 3, the recent killing spree in Atlanta, Georgia that took 8 lives and is now deemed a hate crime against Asian Americans. While January 6th events instilled a chilling sense of shock, fear, sadness, anger, and depression in that order, 2 weeks later, the inauguration speeches and performances managed to raise our spirits as speakers and performers raised their voices in poetry and song with hope. While basking in the afterglow of the diversity of these performances, I was still confused by this tumultuous first month of 2021 that seemed to be topping off more than a year of pandemic fatigue along with the BLM protests. The events of January 6, 2021, now described as acts of domestic terrorism, were unprecedented and shocking, especially when it began to be reported that some white supremacist hate groups were behind the insurrectionist attack on the Capitol building and were attempting to kill democracy. It was shocking to witness on television also the anger and rage expressed by some of the participants who came with intent to harm those inside the Capitol building. Viewing the actual assaults on the Capitol Police and to realize that by the end of it all, 5 people were dead and 140 injured was truly disturbing. While this was an extreme example of intolerance, it shows how quickly misunderstanding and distrust between fellow citizens can so easily lead to devastating consequences. It highlights even more than ever the importance and urgent need for more thoughtful ways of enhancing diversity in education and promoting global and cultural literacy. The unrest and racial divisions unveiled during these events did not end there. For barely 2 months later, on March 16, 2021, a lone white gunman rampaged through Atlanta, Georgia, picking out 3 Asian spas across the city, killing 8 people, 6 of them being Asian women. Once the suspect was apprehended, the spokesperson for the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office responded to media comments thus, said, the suspect does claim that it was not racially motivated. He apparently has an issue that he considers a sex addiction and sees these locations as something that allows him to go to these places. And it's a temptation for him that he wanted to eliminate. And he was pretty much fed up and had been kind of at the end of his rope, and this was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did. Close quote. Reactions to this report from many organizations and lawmakers have been strong, especially from Asian American groups working to fight against discrimination and hate crimes against AAPIs, or Asian American and Pacific Islanders, such as the Chinese for Affirmative Action group, among other anti-hate groups around the country. What is most disturbing about this explanation of what clearly is a targeted hate crime against women of a particular ethnicity and culture is that such a crime has been feared among the AAIP community as a definite possibility since the pandemic began, and they noted a rise in crimes against their community. Asian Americans have been reporting hate crimes as of this writing. NBC and other news outlets have reported 3,800 incidents of anti-Asian attacks in just the past year, and have been calling out for a concerted action all year, but little notice has been taken, and in many instances, these have not been prosecuted as hate crimes. Anti-Asian hate crimes have spiked 150% in the last year, with the targets being particularly Asian women and the elderly. Many have led to the death of those attacked while out grocery shopping, walking on city streets, or using the subway. The reason for this spike is clear. The rhetoric about COVID-19 being referred to as the China virus or the Wuhan flu has created an atmosphere of fear and hate towards China and the people of Chinese descent and placed a target on the backs of all Asians. This is not, however, a problem confined to the United States. In a report issued by the Human Rights Watch on May 12, 2020, at the height of the pandemic, the organization putting forward Human Rights Watch is an organization putting forward action plans to counteract the rise in anti-Asian racism and xenophobia worldwide, calls out the rhetoric of many governments against China and Asians during the COVID-19 crisis, holding them responsible for the rise in anti-Asian racism and xenophobia. Here's what their statement said. Government leaders and senior officials in some instances have directly or indirectly encouraged hate crimes, racism, or xenophobia by using anti-Chinese rhetoric. Several political parties and groups, including in the United States, United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, Greece, France, and Germany, have also latched onto the COVID-19 crisis to advance anti-immigrant, white supremacist, ultra-nationalist, and anti-Semitic and xenophobic conspiracy theories that demonize refugees, foreigners, prominent individuals, and political leaders. Close quote. Now, under these circumstances and these times, we can understand how significantly vital it is for all to embrace global and cultural literacy and foster appreciation of diversity of cultures and peoples in order to develop empathy for others. In her acceptance speech upon receiving the Cecil B. DeMille Lifetime Award at the 2021 Golden Globes, Jane Fonda, 2-time Academy Award winner and activist, makes an impassioned plea for the power of stories in raising consciousness about inequities and for helping us be less divided. Addressing a Hollywood community as storytellers, she speaks to the importance of storytelling in turbulent, crisis-torn times such as ours. Quote, "Stories can change our hearts and minds. They can help us see each other in a new light, to have empathy, to recognize that for all our diversity, we are humans first, right? Because the nonlinear, non-cerebral forms that our art speak on a different frequency. They generate a new energy that can jolt us open and penetrate our defenses so that we can see and hear what we may have been afraid of seeing and hearing." The emphasis on the importance of the diversity of stories was also a running theme in the performances at the January 20th inauguration, which gives me hope that we have made progress with diversity and inclusion education despite some setbacks. Among the many vocal and other performances that were the one that spoke most powerfully for our moment of history was the recitation by Amanda Gorman of her poem, "The Hill We Climb." I'm going to end my talk here and play that video of her recitation that inspires us all and confirms the role of diversity in our future. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attention.